Welcome to excuse me, week number 6, and gradually closing out the term. In lesson 6, we discuss accounting for long-term debt, which is chapter 10. In this chapter, we look at installment notes, lines of credit, and bonds. Here we will talk about effective interest rates and amortization of loans as well. We look at bond discounts and premiums and conclude with the advantages and disadvantages of debt financing versus equity financing. An installment note is a note that requires a payment of interest and principal at regular intervals. The text presents the basic calculations used for scheduling these payments. A line of credit in turn enables a company to borrow or repay funds as needed under a general agreement which restricts the total amount, so the company can borrow up to that total or a lesser amount if that's all that's needed in order to save on interest. These are typically issued by the bank for 1 year only, but are usually easily renewable, so the firm is not going to be faced with a sudden surprise payment at the end of the year. These are also available to homeowners, and equity line of credit is a very popular form of using the equity in your home to pay off other types of higher interest debt. Bonds are a direct loan of funds from the public to the corporation. Here we cover ideas like the maturity date, secured and unsecured bonds, bond ratings, and special features. Bonds are generally the lowest cost means of raising investment funds, provided that the firm is stable enough to qualify for issuing them. Most corporations are not qualified and cannot issue bonds under Securities and Exchange Commission regulations because the perception is that the company is not solid enough to guarantee a bond for a length of time which may run up to 10 years and occasionally even more. Since bonds are easily resold in the secondary bond market, we will examine the calculations of bond premiums and discounts. That is, will the bond sell for more or less than the face value, depending on current interest rates in particular, and the length of time the bond has been outstanding, or the length of time until it is due, or we call that mature, when it's paid off. The price of a bond always moves inversely with interest rates. This is an absolute, it's not a tendency, it is a direct mathematical relationship. When the interest rate goes up, bond prices fall, and vice versa. And this is simply because the bond has a stated interest rate, which, if lower than the going rates, makes the bond worth less than a new bond. On the other hand, if those rates happen to be higher, the bond will sell at a premium or a higher price because it pays a higher rate of interest. We next take up the concept of financial leverage. Financial leverage is simply a measure of how much of your capital investment is borrowed money versus how much is equity money or money placed in there by stockholders, owners. And we look at the tax advantages of debt financing. The simple tax advantage is this: interest on debt is tax deductible. Dividends or payments for equity are not tax deductible. So equity financing has the disadvantage of not providing any kind of tax relief, whereas debt financing certainly does. On the other hand, debt financing creates a necessary obligation. The debt has to be paid or the company goes bankrupt and is possibly liquidated. This means that debt financing is riskier than equity financing if there is a short-term downturn in the market. So, relative advantages of each, we like to have a balance of both types of financing depending on the age of the corporation and its type of product that they offer. And we'll take a look at some of those as we discuss the issues in class. Finally, we look at equity financing and the advantages and disadvantages of this, which we've just mentioned, which is the alternate way of raising capital. Essentially, a firm has three ways of raising capital. One is to take money from internal operations, for instance, SpaceX and Tesla, two of Elon Musk's primary holdings that make him a billionaire. Those are companies that do not pay dividends, and avoid that by taking expansion money out of their profits. The second way of financing a company is by selling stock, and of course the third is by borrowing money through debt, or we call it leveraging. So these are our three ways of raising capital. The first is usually never enough. Profits are seldom large enough to cover the expansion that is possible in the early stages of a product offering or a market. While the market is still growing, the demand for capital requires firms to go outside to either banks or by issuing additional stock as they grow. This concludes our discussion of Chapter 6. Don't forget there is a course evaluation to be filled out. If we haven't already done so, make sure you pay attention to that. And we look forward to seeing you in class and discussing further some of the issues of long-term finance of the corporate form of enterprise. Take care. Bye-bye.